fact, he and I we have known each other for many years, almost 10 years. So when she first brought this chocolate concept and brought some chocolate to me, I was totally against it and closed-minded. Of course, I said, no, I know chocolate is really bad, because when I work with patients, anytime when they had chocolate, whether they tell me or not, from the tissue reaction, I can always tell that they had chocolate, or they had something in that kind of family. And so I always against it. And however, in my nature, in the nature of my practice, it's been always integrating Eastern and Western medicine, conventional and the alternative medicine. So because of that, for the last 30, well, I wouldn't say 30-some years, that will make me too old, 20-some years, close to be 30 years. In my practice, I've always looked for products that will work to complementary the practice that my theme is to do everything we can to prevent disease occur. And that's the concept. In Chinese medicine, that's very much the root of it. But in Western medicine, that's not there. So I have been always trying to bridge them. So in that process, I've always worked with products. In my clinic, I have a few hundred products. I have 20 different lines of product from different companies, because each company have their own uniqueness of some part and not the other part. So because of that, it's a very busy natural product practice in my practice. And I'm constantly searching, because still I always found that I need something else. Something work for this group, something work for that. So one of the big part in my practice, the difficult part, was where do I find something delicious and people like, and then they can also not have the health problem, or doesn't trigger the re-trigger the problem. A lot of times we spend all the effort to correct it, but then they get re-triggered when they do the chocolates, do the cakes, and do the all this. And so this constant battle between me and my patients, where I say, no chocolate, no cookies, no cakes, whatever. And then no matter what behind me, they probably had it, and then they have symptoms came back, whether it's asthma, whether it's arthritis, whether it's headache, whatever they came back, and that we knew that was already doing well. And I was always able to find out from energy testing and so forth, found out that they had something. So it was a constant battle. So when Kay brought that concept in, I liked the concept, but I never believed chocolate could be good. So I just closed it, and I said, no, I don't think so. But she did let me some to test, and I do muscle testing to see energetical compatibility on each patient. And I also test some on myself. I would have get very sick if I had chocolate normally. But when she gave me those samples and I tested, it didn't seem to knock me down like typical chocolate. So I thought, this is a little bit different. And then as I test on the patients, I started to realize, yes, this does test different, So then I began to open my mind a little bit, and then also just, Kay doesn't mind I mentioned, just look at Kay's progress. I was noticing that her inflammation actually went down, and she did not need to see me as often. We talk, we see each other on a friend base, but she didn't need to see me as a patient. And so I started kind of like let my mind open up a little bit. I was so close-minded in that. So as I open my mind, I look into the literatures and the a lot more new publications as this whole antioxidant come into the era, that all of a sudden we all seem to realize, besides of eat well, have vegetable and fruit and all this, we still have a whole piece missing, is the antioxidant. Not all food created equal. Some food are just much better than the other. So the whole antioxidant explosion actually is why I brought this chocolate in the front line, because after all the testing, the chocolate actually does test the best, the highest. So we're going to go into some slides. So that's where the background is. As I come to open my mind and I started study, I realized there's a tremendous health benefit in the chocolate. And then when the research, I was in one of these conference that was presenting the weight loss research result. published in the American Journal of Bariatric Medicine, and I was really impressed. So since then, I've been incorporating this product in my practice. I have to say, I'm still learning a lot about it. Every time when I learn, I'm amazed how this works really well with the tremendous coverage of what we need as a food base, which I will go into a little more. So why is so good? So we go back to the antioxidant concept. I'm pretty sure by now you all understand that concept, right? Antioxidant essentially is a process against the oxidation process. Oxidation process is a processing of destruction. It's a processing of rusting. It's a processing of aging. It's a processing of inflammation. So in short, it's a process that we want to slow down. It's a process we don't want as much. Our body will have this oxidation process every time we metabolize. We breathe the air, anything we around, and all this have this constant oxidation comes into battle with us. But why is now become so much more important? For several folds. Number one, we live longer now. We are much more, we live so much longer that we are facing so much more aging process that affect our quality of life. Therefore, we got to do more things way ahead to get our aging process much better. The 60s is the new 20s, right? That's why I always tell my patient, they say, oh, I'm old, I'm 60. I say, no. The 60s is the new 20s. Therefore, we have to preserve our body as young as we can at the 20s, no later than 32. So that's why we need to do a lot more. On the other hand, if you look at the environment, the food that we eat, it's bombarded with more oxidation. Look at the signals in this room. That's damaging to ourselves. We don't like those frequencies. Old days when we lived in the mountain, a lot of negative iron. There's nothing like this so bombarded as whether you see or not. What we take in, if you are a vegetarian, you take the vegetable food. How often can you get pure organic? If it's not that, then you worry about pesticides, you herbicides, you worry about fertilizer. And so, and if you eat protein, then you wonder what kind of hormone was fed and what kind of grain was fed to this cow, what kind of cow passed this to another. So it's there. You can't just avoid. You can't live in a bubble. I try to look for everything and eat. It just doesn't work. So what can we do? Then therefore we have to fight the battle by taking things in so that we guard our body from all this tremendous amount of oxidation that coming beyond our own repair. So that's why we do need, I believe everybody needs good high antioxidant. So that's what it is. Now, how do we know, what do we know about, how do we get the understanding what food has more antioxidant property and what food is less? And this is one way to study about it. No, this is good. Oxygen radical absorbance capacity, in short, it's called aura. This is a unit. In short, it's a unit to measure the ability of reduced oxidation. That's a simple way to understand. So, just by look at the unit, we don't need to know the complex physics to know how they derive. We just know if you have higher unit in aura value, then that food, that particular plant has higher antioxidant value. Okay? That's all we need to know. So let's look. Oh, thank you. Now this is a good example. Thank you, Kate. This is oxidation. I love it. Look at the banana from very pretty color to very rusty color. That's an oxidation. And then you have the person up there. It's the same oxidation process. Our skin, our hair, our body, our bone, every tissue goes through the same process. And so that going back to where I mentioned. So we know that if we daily use a good amount of antioxidant, you can easily gain your youth, healthy years. They say 10 years here. I think you can easily get 30 years, good years, if you do well. You learn to preserve the body as early as you can. That's my philosophy. You know, because I fix cars when they go really broken down. I mean car, not car, person. Like the 80-year-old, 90-year-old coming that really I have limited thing I could do. Or I have somebody 30-year-old that I can tell them what you can do now. Don't go there. You know, you much better that. So that's my philosophy in my practice. Constantly, I tell them, you don't want to go there, therefore you got to do something here. So that's exactly how this process is. Thank you. So we talk about the aura value. So it's easy to see the pictures. If you look at where we get the antioxidant, generally speaking, food and plant food especially, but each of them have different value. So if we look at this nugget, thank you, Kay is always so clear. I'm always so amazed. Okay, here's the nugget, and if you look at one nugget, the antioxidant value is equivalent to about half pound of spinach, and that's kind of like we could relate. And I also like that. Do you have the square? I also like the square example because that's also easy to relate. If you have 3 of those little X power square, the ORAC value is equivalent to 6.5 pounds of tomato. So if you think about how often can you eat 6.5 pounds of tomato in one day, right? Then you can also just think about the cost too. If you get organic tomato at about average $3 a pound, 6.5 pounds, how much that would be versus 3 pieces of this chocolate. So all of a sudden it becomes clear to me, in order to get sufficient enough antioxidant, you really need to go to the right source. Spinach is fine, or tomato is fine, but do we get enough? So that's why we need to look at how food, the value. Now if you look at this food that we eat every day is good, and you can see from the bottom up, the ORAC value is going up. And so the most of the time we know the berry group is good, as you see in the middle, higher than the grapes and peaches, and those are good. Now we look at blackberry, prune, plum, they all going higher and higher. Now, if you look at that, what's common is the color. The color get deeper as the higher value. All of a sudden everybody is looking for purple food to eat, black food to eat, except now genetically they can make purple tomato. Purple, is it purple tomato? I don't know whether they come up with, but I know, yeah. Or you could have many things, but that's genetic alterate. Now that's a whole different story. When we have time, we'll talk about that whole thing. But that's why you need to have the things that grow from nature, not altered. But if you look at that, now if you look at acai berry, all of a sudden it jump up way higher. 53,000 versus, you know, the bottom, those ones on the 1,000 value. And then if you look at unprocessed cocoa, it's over 60,000. Now if you go back down to the processed chocolate or cocoa, this number actually is more generous. A lot of the other measurements that processed cocoa depends on how bad it's processed. Usually 75% of the antioxidant value lost in the process with the heat and alkaline. So most of the time, that's one of the reasons when we test the regular chocolate, they are less well tested because not only they have the junk come with it, the dairy, the refined sugar, and the wax, and the preservative, whatever, but they also have less antioxidant value. So the good and bad doesn't have this tremendous advantage of high antioxidant. In my observation, I think that's very important. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, thank you. Therefore, I really feel after I studied, besides a lot of scientific papers with a lot of big word vocabularies, but in short, now I really think chocolate is a great source of high quality antioxidant. The reason, besides of the value, the strict number itself, it also shows a high quality in a way of variety, a very broad spectrum of antioxidant. Antioxidant can be captured in a spectrum, a light spectrum. And chocolate, the darkness of it covers broader, which is very, very needed because the radiation from sun is certain group of spectrum. The pesticide has certain spectrum. So the broader spectrum the antioxidant is, the better fighting. You have the weapon to fight anybody comes through. They can be. So that's another very important concept. So not that only the value itself is high, but also the spectrum is great, which we don't have a slideshow in this one, but that is very important.
Is that what you wanted?
Not yet.
Sorry.
No, yeah, but that's okay. That's my own little observation, so that's why right now it's not on the slides yet. But anyway, so now why so Psy? Chocolate is better. Number one, we all know, coming from this medical background, you have to look for a very reputable company is always my key. So in the past, in my clinic, all the products come from professional line that we could trace back and all that. So when this product comes to me, this is the first time I look into outside the professional lines. So it was hard for me. It took me 5 years between learning the chocolate could be good and trying to get comfortable of something outside my box that I feel comfortable about. But one thing brought my comfort was these products are certified by a third party, and the all right value are verified to the end product. Now that's another very important concept. If you test the resource, most of the time they do test well, but it's this loss in the process. Therefore, when you're able to have a certification on the end product, that's very important. That means you can ensure this value gets into the body, not from the beginning in the African mountain or something, right? So that's why that made me feel comfortable. So that's certified, and the reason they can certify in such high value because the cocoa, the cacao beans are processed in a unique cold process, which avoided the destruction process. And then also, it has the combination of the show Vita has the combination of the 3 most high antioxidant food, which is the cacao, cold processed, and acai berry, and the blueberry. So that's why it can allow that high antioxidant is locked in a very well delivered system. And then I think this, here, this slice is no white sugar, no refined sugar, no caffeine and wax, and those preservatives, those junks. Yes.
So how does it stay stable without preservatives? How does it not go bad without the preservatives?
That's why these ones we usually recommend you don't leave it too long. Like the freshness become very important within the the data suggested to use it, and they're freshly delivered from the whole line. And if you leave it long, I know you can see that some chocolate can turn with a little bit whitish color, and it resin much easier.
Does it ferment?
Huh?
Does it ferment?
Ferment is a whole different process. Ferment has to do with their yeast, sugar, right?
But there's no sugars in it.
This one has natural sugar that's on the fruit itself.
But what stops it from going bad? Because I know if I buy an organic apple and I let it sit at my house for 3 days, it's going bad right away. Like, what stops that from going bad?
Answer here?
Yeah, so our process to stabilize the sugar, it is, I'm Dr. Carla Rudolph, and Dr. Lee and I have talked quite a bit on the phone too. And I'm going to speak a little bit later. I don't want to take too much time, but the fermentation is that most raw chocolates are fermented, and we have done another extra step that is, it's a patented process in Belgium that I don't know exactly how they do it, but it's quick flashed and it stabilizes the chocolate so it is not fermenting and breaking down. It doesn't continually break down, so that's as much as I know. The process is patented, so it's not, it is a secret out there, but
I'd like to know more about that, because I do
Yeah.
have some really strategic people that ask those kind of questions.
Yeah, it is not fermented. One of the things, we don't alkalize it, we don't ferment it to stay, but we keep it stable so the chocolate does not continue to break down as other fermented raw chocolates do. So, and which is also can be very hard on the digestive tract, continuing to have certain foods that are breaking down in that way. So, yeah. Fermentation is interesting, but in some foods that are really naturally fermented, like sauerkraut, and those can be good foods. but when it comes to chocolate and people eating a lot of raw chocolates that are fermented, I've seen it over and over again, that they starts to really
So you said
irritate their
it's
stomach.
like pasteurized?
No, it's like, it's like it's on the raw bean itself, so it doesn't affect the inside of the bean, it stabilizes that chocolate to keep it from not being fermented, which is fermented chocolate we don't
I'm
want.
curious, is that a chemical
Jacqueline,
process?
we'll
No, it's not a
answer your
chemical
question.
process.
Sorry.
On the
It's
side,
boiling
yeah.
water.
Yeah,
It's
that's what we
boiling
understand.
hot,
Oh, okay.
on the bean outside part of it. It's just, it's like if you, what are they, when you what do you call it, you cauterize something, you just kind of do the outside of it to stabilize it, so.
The outer.
But that's all I know as far, because it's a secret.
That helps.
Okay, thank you.
We'll be glad to answer any questions that you have after our presentation so that we can continue moving along. Okay.
Okay, very good. And I do want to, just on that note, just to know
Yes. Sure.
that there's a freeze-dry technique. Freeze-dry is negative temperature under minus 200 some temperature, where all things can freeze. Freeze, even embryo can freeze. No life continue. Therefore, there's no continued rusting or no nothing. Then, when you rehydrate them, then all the nutrient preserves and come back.
Is
That
that
is
done?
applied onto the chocolate, onto that
Yeah.
active. But how they apply to others, I'm not familiar with. So I think Dr. Kala mentioned something, some other technical part that I think I probably have not learned. Yeah. Okay. All right. So essentially, that's this is the reason I think the Shosai chocolate tests well, laboratory-wise, tests well individual-wise. Personally, I have really tested, and as well as seeing a lot of use in my patients and my clinic, and we have a way to really able to tell when someone get inflamed versus not, and that has been. So clinically, I have lots of examples and cases that I know, so I feel comfortable. That's it. I put my, professional knowledge into this, and I have learned it actually really worked well clinically. All right.
Thank you, Dr. Lee.
Thank you, and I'll be glad to answer